said to him, Mr. President, you keep talking about the war like was. I said, is it over? He said, it's over.
Is President Trump now claiming the Iran war is completely over after his US naval blockade fails spectacularly too? Has Trump finally admitted strategic defeat after failing to reopen Hormuz, block it effectively, or secure any meaningful deal? Big revelation emerges from a US news anchor's exclusive interview with Trump amid the unraveling Iran war crisis. Trump interview teaser drops right after US military fails publicly to block Iranian ships near the Hormuz Strait. Have multiple Iran-linked ships successfully crossed the strait despite America's much-vaunted naval blockade efforts? Is Trump desperately rushing to end the war entirely as the Hormuz blockade slips completely beyond US control? Unable to break Iran's iron grip on the strategic waterway, does Trump desperately pitch a war nearly over narrative? Is Trump scrambling for any face-saving, quick exit strategy while preparing desperately for a second round of peace talks? Days after peace talks with Iran failed to produce results, President Trump has signaled that the conflict with Iran may be nearing its end, suggesting a potential de-escalation. Trump's comments were revealed in clips from a yet-to-be-aired interview conducted with Fox News, providing new insights into his administration's stance. The interviewer, Maria Bartiromo, claimed that Trump told her directly during the discussion that the war with Iran was effectively over. In a video she posted to her X account, Bartiromo claimed that Trump stated the conflict with Iran was over, highlighting his optimistic assessment. Subsequently, in clips officially released by Fox News, Trump clarified that the war was close to being over, indicating progress toward resolution. Trump's comments to Fox News were reported by the Times of Israel on April 14, covering the details of the interview excerpts. Donald Trump said, and I quote, "I think it's Iran war. Close to over. Yeah. I mean, I view it as very close to over. If I pulled up stakes right now, it would take them 20 years to rebuild that country. And we're not finished. We'll see what happens. I think they want to make a deal very badly." Unquote. Trump also justified the military actions, arguing that the strikes had prevented Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons in the near term. According to Trump, without this US intervention, Iran would already possess a functional nuclear arsenal by now. Earlier, Trump told the New York Post that talks with Iran could resume within 2 days, pointing to possible diplomatic restarts. Trump's comments came amid ongoing reports of ships still managing to cross the Strait of Hormuz despite the active US naval blockade. After imposing a naval blockade in the Strait of Hormuz, Donald Trump has signaled a possible shift toward renewed diplomatic engagement. The US president indicated that he is considering a second round of negotiations with Iran, according to recent reports. In an interview with the New York Post, Trump stated that discussions with Iran could resume within the next 2 days. He also suggested that the proposed talks may once again take place in Islamabad, based on current indications. However, Trump's remarks appear to differ from earlier statements made in the same interview cycle. Previous reports had indicated that he described the pace of talks with Iran as slow and uncertain. He had also earlier suggested that a second round of negotiations might not be held in Pakistan. According to the New York Post, Trump had even indicated that European countries could host the next phase of discussions. This renewed diplomatic signal comes even as the US continues to enforce its naval blockade in the Strait of Hormuz. Reports suggest that the blockade, initiated on April 13th, has not yet produced a decisive impact on maritime activity. This is despite the deployment of more than 10,000 US personnel, along with multiple warships and aircraft. The US on April 13th officially launched a comprehensive naval blockade aimed specifically at stopping ships from entering or exiting key Iranian ports along the Persian Gulf. However, fresh reports indicated that multiple commercial and cargo ships successfully transited the Strait of Hormuz despite the heavily publicized US blockade efforts. An Iran-linked oil tanker along with several Chinese ships were reportedly able to transit freely amid the ongoing blockade, underscoring potential cracks in the American enforcement. A Chinese tanker sanctioned by the United States sailed through the Strait of Hormuz on April 14th, marking a striking development amid the new maritime standoff in the Gulf. The vessel passed through Hormuz despite the US-imposed blockade, according to ship tracking data that showed it successfully made the transit out of the Gulf. Reuters made the claim about the vessel Rich Starry, citing tracking data from LSEG, Marine Traffic, and PLR to document the ship's movement through the strategic waterway. According to the same data, the Rich Starry would be the first ship to make it through the strait and exit the Gulf since the blockade began. Notably, both the tanker and its owner, Shanghai Xianrun Shipping Company, Limited, are under US sanctions, making the passage especially politically sensitive. Reuters reported that sanctions on the Chinese-linked company were imposed because of its dealings with Iran, placing the vessel in the wider network of trade restrictions tied to Tehran. The Rich Starry is a medium-range tanker carrying about 250,000 barrels of methanol, according to the shipping data cited in the reports. The vessel loaded that cargo at its last port of call in Hamria in the United Arab Emirates, adding another regional link to the ship's voyage. Reuters also reported that the Chinese-owned tanker has a Chinese crew on board, based on the available vessel data. An Iranian embassy statement described the Rich Starry as a Malawi-flagged tanker, adding another detail to the growing attention around the ship's transit. Iranian embassy in Ghana wrote on X, and I quote, "Breaking, Rich Starry, a Chinese oil tanker sanctioned for shipping Iranian oil, flying the flag of Malawi, a country with no coastline, just sailed through America's blockade of the Strait of Hormuz." The Navy, with its many big beautiful ships, issued repeated warnings. Reportedly, the tanker's captain upgraded to premium to skip the ads. Edit. We're being told the blockade only applies to countries the US isn't afraid of. That list used to be long. It now fits on Trump's McDonald's receipt, delivered by DoorDash. Unquote. Meanwhile, the US Vice President on April 14 also hinted at the possibility of a second round of talks with Iran to address remaining issues.
I think some people, their reaction to this is to say, well, he shouldn't have said that. And look, there are certainly things that the Pope has said in the last few months that I disagree with. Let me just take one very concrete example, related to this conflict in Iran. So the Pope said something where he said, and I'm gonna try to remember the exact quote, but he said that God is never on the side of those who wield the sword. God is never on the side of those who wield the sword. I'm pretty sure that he said that exact statement. Now, on the one hand, again, I like that the Pope is an advocate for peace. I think that's certainly one of his roles. On the other hand, how can you say that God is never on the side of those who wield the sword? Was God on the side of the Americans who liberated France from the Nazis? Was God on the side of the Americans who liberated Holocaust camps and liberated those innocent people from, those who had survived the Holocaust? I certainly think the answer is yes, and I agree. Jesus Christ does not. I agree. Jesus Christ certainly does not support genocide. I think it's very, very important for the Pope to be careful when he talks about matters of theology. And I think that one of these issues here is that there has been, again, hey, random dude screaming, I told you I'd respond to your point. I just want to respond to this question first. But I think one of the issues here is that if you're going to opine on matters of theology, you've got to be careful. You've got to make sure it's anchored in the truth. And that's one of the things that I try to do. And it's certainly something I would expect from the clergy, whether they're Catholic or Protestant. Now, to respond to this guy here, he said, I believe he said the administration supports a genocide in Gaza. And here's my response to that. When we came in, the humanitarian situation in Gaza was an absolute catastrophe. You know who's the person who got a peace agreement in Gaza? Donald J. Trump. So if you want to complain about what happened in Gaza, so if you want, sir, to complain about what happened in Gaza, why don't you complain about Joe Biden and the last administration? We're the administration that solved that problem. The president, excuse me, sir, right now, you see more humanitarian aid coming into Gaza than it has any time in the past 5 years, because we have taken that situation seriously. And that's one of the things that I'm proud of about our administration, is whether it's there or Thailand and Cambodia, we have consistently tried as much as we can to solve these problems, not just complain about them like the guy who just ran away angry.
One question is, when you looked across from these Iranian negotiators, what did you make of them? Did you get the sense that they really were the right people? I mean, I'm assuming you guys know this type of thing, but...
Yeah, I mean, look, you never know. The United States had never had meetings at that level with the Iranian government in 49 years. Like it's a meeting that had never before happened. Not Democrat, not Republican. We had never had a meeting like that where you have, the person who's effectively running the country in Iran sitting across from the Vice President of the United States. That had never happened. And what look, honestly, after 49 years, there's a lot of course, mistrust between Iran and the United States of America. You're not going to solve that problem overnight. But yeah, I think the people we were sitting across from wanted to make a deal. And I know the President of the United States told us to go out there and negotiate in good faith. That's what we did. That's what we're going to keep on doing. So you never know, though. But here's where we are on, fundamentally, the President set a policy. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, and right now we are negotiating to make sure that very thing happens. And here's, what's interesting about this is, what's interesting about this is that we have this ceasefire that's in place. I think it's 6 or 7 days old. Right now, this ceasefire is holding. And what you're seeing is, the President wants to he doesn't want to make like a small deal. He wants to make the grand bargain. And what he's basically offering to Iran is very simple, and frankly, it's something that no president has had the ability to offer. He said that if you're willing to act like a normal country, we are willing to treat you economically like a normal country. He doesn't want a small deal. And that's one of the reasons why, one, I'd say in Pakistan, we made a ton of progress. But the reason why the deal is not yet done is because the president, he really wants a deal where Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon, Iran is not state sponsoring terrorism, but also the people of Iran can thrive and prosper and join the world economy.
$25 करोड़ गरीब गरीबी को परास्त करके बाहर निकले।
For the good of our nation, let's work together and let's truly make America great again.
The fastest news breaks.
Requested PM saying that look, you will have to speak to Putin and to Zelensky.
The biggest news makers.
The relationship with India is probably the most important bilateral relationship the U.S. will have for the rest of this century.
The capital delivered quite an election result today.
Expert analysis.
The million-dollar question today is how to stop this dance of death.
Ground reports.
I'm standing at the crossroad of the Kumbh Mela. Behind me are more than 100 entry ghats.
Long-form interviews.
Exclusionary politics is reflected in Manipur case as well. You don't bother because this is a small state.
Deep dive into burning issues.
It's often said DRC could be the richest country in the whole world. It's because of what sits underneath.
Why exactly did the US topple the Sheikh Hasina government?
HT videos. We don't just break news, we break it down.